And welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator, John North. John Becker is away. Our guest this morning is a veteran of the ring, both political and otherwise. It's Mayor Glenn Jacobs of Knox County. Mayor, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Looking forward to the visit with you. Before we get into that, let's introduce our panelists. We have to my left, Democrat Don Bosch, an attorney.
Good morning,
welcome,
John.
Sir. And also to his left is Eddie Smith, a Republican who's also involved in child help. Eddie, how are you today?
I am great this morning. John, how are you?
I'm well, sir. A new grandfather. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. As of Father's Day.
Yeah, and you worked it in. It was Father's Day. That's awesome.
We don't do anything small in our family.
Good planning. Good planning.
Outstanding. Mayor, welcome. We're very appreciative that you're here. I don't know about you, but with one sort of major exception, the 8 years have flown by. There was that kind of big speed bump in the middle of all that. But I was curious, and we're going to get into a lot of things about your administration, highs, if there were any lows, your thoughts about the future. But I'm just wondering if you have changed at all over the course of that time, because you came in, sort of, some people said as an outsider, maybe intentionally as an outsider. You've now been inside very much for the last 8 years. What are your thoughts?
I've gotten older and hopefully somewhat wiser about everything. Yeah, I don't feel that I've changed. I've always been able to stay very grounded, whether it's in my wrestling career or what I do now. I think that one of the most important things that I've learned is the importance of teamwork and surrounding yourself with great people. And I think that Knox County has been successful and will be successful going into the future, just because not only the people out in our community, but a lot of great folks that work for Knox County government.
You said something really interesting at the start, which is that you wanted to let others in the United States see Knox County a very positive light, to represent Knox County very positively. How do you think you've done that?
I think we've done that very well. And Knox County, it's not me though, Knox County sells itself. When people come here and they see all that we have to offer, not only the natural assets such as our waterways, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, just everything that East Tennessee has, people are so friendly. I really don't have to do a whole lot. I just try to get out there and tell people about it.
So, Mr. Mayor, by the way, I say I finally influenced your sartorial fashion this morning with the gray suit, blue shirt, and paisley tie. But
you got the memo.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a good segue into what I'd like to ask. You talk about Knox County sells itself, and you're the person taking over your office has some concerns that maybe it's oversold itself by way of growth, and too much growth and infrastructure to support it, and that the developers maybe aren't pulling their fair share. What's your perspective on our growth and all of those topics?
Well, the growth is going to occur anyway.
That's right.
And I always ask folks, would you rather be the place that folks are trying to get out of, or the place that folks want to come to? And certainly Knox County is the place that people want to come to. When I first moved here in 1995, I'm from Missouri, folks back there like, University of Tennessee, what else is in Knoxville? And now it's no longer a secret.
I had to convince my fellow Missourians it was Vol, not Vol.
Exactly. So. Now it's no longer a secret. We have a great quality of life here. Obviously, we want to preserve that. But in order to do that, we have to be smart about what is happening. We see it across the state. We're a low-tax state. Economic opportunity is booming here. Along with that comes people, so we just have to be able to manage that.
So as it goes to the infrastructure argument, whether it's schools, roads, sidewalks, utilities, do you think that the developers are currently pulling their fair share, or do you think that, hey, government, that's something government should be doing and we should be doing more or less of that?
Well, for instance, we had our Advanced Knox plan, and what that really is trying to do is funnel the growth where the infrastructure already exists. This is obviously a balancing act, and there's all sorts of competing interests here. So as a community, we just have to be smart about it. Whether it's where we build, how we build, what goes where, those are things that we have to make good decisions about. I will say in the past, we've seen, for instance, Hardin Valley, where there's just been a lot of urban sprawl. Frankly, that was a result of our zoning at the time. And we're trying to change that to where now in other parts of the county, we don't get that. That we have much more constrained growth in the rural areas at the same time that in the areas which can support growth, more of a suburban atmosphere, that can happen there.
And Glenn, because Mr. Mayor is a title that you came into, but I knew you before you had that one. And as you're leaving office, I see the same Glenn leaving that I saw come in. So it goes to, but one of the things that I've really seen you hone in on and focus on, especially with Reed City USA, is focusing on reading literacy over your time as mayor. I want to talk about that because there was two parts of your administration. There was the learning how this all works, in comes a pandemic, and then term two.
Right, sure. Literacy is vitally important. The global economy is innovation-based, technology-based. It's rapidly evolving. If we want to field a workforce which is competitive, it all starts with literacy. As you know, third grade literacy rates are an accurate metric of graduating from high school on time, which is then an accurate metric of success in other areas of your life. So that's something we've really concentrated on that we can do in conjunction with schools, but also really supplementing what schools do.
Mayor, you came into office after Tim Burchett, who was sort of very notorious about being miserly when it came to the budget and gets credit for being a good budget steward. You have done the same. There are some, however, though, that look at the Knox County budget, which is $700 million essentially for schools, $300 million for county operations, and say, oh, there are ways to cut. Could you clarify, please?
Sure. You can look at the budget, and certainly I think you can find some ways where, oh, I might do this differently, I might do that differently. When you look at our spend per resident adjusted for inflation, it is actually lower than when Congressman Burchett was mayor. Our debt per person adjusted for inflation is also lower. That's quite an achievement considering that I followed Tim Burchett into office. Some of the things that we might spend money on, the reason we do that is because if we don't spend some money on this now, it could incur a much larger expense later. So those are just decisions that obviously have to be made. You can agree or not agree, but when you look at the total budget, I think that it's been very fiscally responsible over my 8 years.
Did you ever find a time during your 2 terms where it was more difficult to avoid the idea of raising taxes?
Where it's more difficult? Certainly during the pandemic, we were very concerned because we were afraid that our revenue was really going to drop. It didn't. Then we have some issues with some debt issues coming up, which we all know about. We have money put away for that, but nevertheless, that is going to be a bit of a concern.
Do we have enough money put away for that?
Yes, we do. We have $34 million in our debt service fund, which it'll be tight, but it'll get through. It's just up to the next mayor to.
But if I recall, the numbers are projected to exceed well beyond that.
No, they're not.
They're not.
If we budget as we have it now, we will be fine. Things will get tight, but we will be fine.
But we will have to tap that rainy day fund to cover that.
Well, not the rainy day fund. The rainy day fund's different. This is the actual debt service fund.
Debt service. So do you think we'll be into the rainy day fund?
No. We should not get into the rainy day fund.
That'll be an interesting prediction down the road.
Well, again,
I hope you're right.
Well, I think I will be. Chris Caldwell, best finance director in the state, thinks I will
Pretty
be.
good.
But back to your question about taxes. Obviously there are times where, oh gosh, we can just solve this by raising taxes. But I made a pledge when I came into office that I wasn't going to do that. That has kept us very disciplined.
We've got to take a break. We have Glenn Jacobs, Knox County Mayor, as our guest. After we come back from the break, more discussion on his time in office. It's election night 2018. That very tall man standing next to our reporter is Glenn Jacobs, and that is the night you won that election. How about that, Mayor? When you look at that, what are you thinking?
I was in the primary, and I won by 23 votes.
Yes,
so
that was a
very stressful night.
That was a squeaker.
Obviously, moving on to the general election, that was a much larger margin of victory. But it's a little overwhelming, and then to think that I have about a month to put everything together, and had a lot of help from Congressman Burchett, who was mayor, and his staff. But nevertheless, all of a sudden you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
You don't strike me as a guy who dwells on the past, but have you ever sort of sat back and said, if it hadn't been for those 23 votes or whatever, I wouldn't be there on election night?
I do think about that. And I would like to tell your audience that when folks think that their vote doesn't matter, boy, it sure mattered in that race.
It sure does. And there have been some others since then, too.
Yes.
Eddie.
And again, I just want to put a bow on the tax issue, especially as your son sunsetting and looking into retirement with that fishing pole, and kind of challenging the next county commission, the next mayor. There's two ways you can grow your tax base. You can either increase taxes, or you can increase the development, you can increase the businesses that are paying into the tax base. Looking over your time, we've now added the stadium downtown, which I believe is outperforming every metric that we said.
It is.
You've got Green Heck, which is building out in East Knoxville, one of the largest investments in Knox County's history. What do you see coming up in the future, how we keep that going to continue growing that tax base?
I think we just keep on doing what we're doing. We're very fortunate to live in a state which is business friendly, has low taxes. Not having a state income tax is a huge deal. And we just keep on doing what we're doing, and I think organically the results will happen. One of the things that I'm most proud of is, for instance, with Green Heck, because not only does that help county government, that also represents opportunity for the people in that area that they might not have otherwise had. I remember thinking that the mayor's real priority is ensuring that the folks here in Knox County can have good careers and economic opportunity. And when people have that, a lot of the other issues, I can deal with those issues, but I can't really deal with thinking people can't put food on the table, can't put their kids through college or whatever. So when folks have that, it makes everybody's lives, everybody's job a lot easier.
So Glenn, obviously we live in somewhat of a bifurcated community with city and county government. Mm-hmm. County government has historically, over the last 20 years, certainly been heavily Republican. City government has been largely Democratic. You and Mayor Kincannon have done a good job of getting along and cohabitating, so to speak, on the 6th floor of the city county building. But, as I look forward, I see our next mayor likely being even further to the right than you are. And Mayor Kincannon is going to be there for a little bit longer. And it's likely that there will be another Democratic mayor in the city, just given the demographics. What do you see for the future? Because it continues, the nation gets more polarized, and you know it. You've been sometimes part of that online, but you've calmed that down a little bit, I think, and with the Trump aspects. But how do you think we're going to do? Is it going to get worse in Knox County and Knoxville, or do you think it'll stay sort of the same? We get along pretty well.
I can't predict the future, but I think that we will get along pretty well, because what's good for Knoxville is good for Knox County. What's good for Knox County is good for the region. All that's vice versa. And I think everybody understands that. Mayor Kincannon and I have issues that we disagree on.
What's the biggest disagreement that you guys have policy-wise?
I mean, she's on the left, I'm on the right. So
I understand,
she sees government a different way.
She sees government as a solution a lot of times. I see it as a problem. But on the issues that we can work on, we do work on those, and we don't dwell on the things that we can't work on together. And that's been the key to the relationship, is just not, Don, I get it, and you're right, the nation is here. But if you think about it, we probably agree on a lot of stuff. We agree on a lot more stuff than we don't.
Local politics, that's very true.
And when you concentrate on that, and you don't, you go the other way, let whoever live and let live on the other stuff, that's how you do it.
My fear is we've seen candidates on this show recently, they're at the local level, and they're still focusing on the national issues, and where people, and you and I both know, and Eddie as well as a former state legislator, it's potholes and streets and sidewalks and law enforcement, and that's what matters. And I'm fearful that, I'm curious to your opinion as whether it gets better or worse.
I think that folks will realize that's what matters in the end.
I hope.
I wanted to talk a little bit about COVID. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't, because anybody who was in public office at that time faced quite a challenge. It was interesting, as I was preparing for this interview, to go back and see some of the press conferences, the briefings, the health department discussions that you had. You were always pretty much asserting a pretty positive line. You were like, we're going to get through this. There are going to be some rough times. But I'm just wondering if you ever did have some difficult times, and maybe earlier was more difficult than later, because that thing went on for 15 months, a year and a half, I don't know, 2 years. But
it felt like a decade.
It was a miserable time. It was a miserable time, and you were a leader trying to lead people during that time.
It was a miserable time, and what can you say? You had wished it hadn't happened, but you also have to play with the cards that you're dealt. There was never a time that I felt I was doing the wrong thing. It's Don. My job is to protect the Constitution in the end, and that's what I felt that I had to do. That often put me at odds with people, but not only did we have to be concerned about people's health, we also had to be concerned about the economy, because the economy is people. And what was happening, especially in the early days of COVID, is we were concentrating so much on the other stuff that we were forgetting about things like people are social creatures. We were forgetting about the economy. We were forgetting about all those things. As we come out of COVID, we want to make sure that we could be in position to ramp back up. So it was difficult, because you see a lot of the things that are happening, but at the same time, you have to stick by your convictions.
There was a lot of uncertainty, though. How did you deal with that?
Again, you just stick by your convictions. And in the end, a lot of the things that I was saying, I think I was proven right. I was back when all that was happening. It was very difficult, but it was common sense too. And looking at some of the things that were happening, some of the things were being said, and thinking, I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. And I think that was an important voice, because when you have almost everybody talking one way, a lot of times, I think Mark Twain said, when you're following the crowd, it's time to check and go the other way. And I felt that was my job a lot during COVID.
Amen for common sense. It is time for another break. We're talking to Glenn Jacobs, Knox County Mayor. After this break, we'll be back.
You know, Glenn Jacobs goes by the name of Kane. Where is Kane?
DJT, that was in Iowa in 2024, when he was ramping up his campaign. Mr. Mayor, his approval ratings aren't so good. Yours are way better. Have you got any advice for him?
No, I don't. I think he's doing a fine job, and I'll let him do his job, and I'll do mine.
For as big and mean as you are, that was a really safe position to go run to. Glenn, and let me ask, obviously this is the part of the show where we ask outgoing candidates, what's next? So we've talked about that with you before, but let me tell you two of the things that are being talked about in the community. I'd like your comment on both. One, that you will seek and hopefully receive an appointment if Marsha Blackburn wins the governorship to her Senate seat. And two, that maybe you don't go there, and maybe you go into her cabinet. You sit there for the 4 years and work for her, much like Randy Boyd did for part of it with Governor Bill Haslam. And that if Marsha chooses not to run for a second term, you want to be governor in 4 years. Comment on both of those positions, and if you had to pick, which one would you rather do?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, those are just theories, and not mine. I still have a couple months left in office.
You do.
And I will be working as hard my last day as I did my first. That is my priority at this point. Whatever the future holds, and I don't know what that is at this point.
Do you have a preference? If one of those were to come up, was there one you'd rather do than the other?
I really thought about it.
Would you do both?
Oh, would you do both?
Not at the same time, but would you be fine doing either one?
I would be. Those would both be a great honor to me, but obviously those are things in the future that at this point I'm not thinking about.
What does Crystal want?
Crystal,
your wife.
Crystal has been very supportive of me with everything I do, and part of the reason that I was able to do a 25-year career in WWE, being on the road all the time, is because she's supportive. She's a very strong woman. So whatever I decide to do in the future, whether it remains in politics or not, I'm sure that she'll be very happy with that.
So let me set politics aside for a second. Let's assume you don't do any of that. What would you like to do at the sunset of your life, and because as you look back over your WWE career, you had your foundation supporting kids. As your time as mayor, you've been supporting kids in reading literacy. What would you like to do if politics were not in the equation?
I think that all of us are put in this planet to make it a better place in our own way. I have been very blessed because I've been given a pretty big platform to do that. So I don't know exactly what that is, but just whatever opportunities that I might have to be a positive, contributing member of society would be something I'd be very interested in.
If the Republican wins the Knox County election this summer, what's your advice for that person?
The most important thing for anybody is to build a good team. You get the right people on board, and you're going to be able to take the ship where it needs to go.
A lot of people say you have done that.
I have.
And it would be noticeable if those people leave or are not retained.
Well, obviously the next person is going to exercise their judgment, but it would just be to get the best people you can possibly find. Mayor's a big job, and you can't do it all by yourself. The key to whatever successes that I've had is because I've just had great people around me.
I also wondered, all kidding aside, your term ends after August. Do you have any plans for September? Have you thought about doing anything? I don't.
No matter what happens, you've got a really nice August and November, don't you?
I don't remember that you vacation, but maybe you do.
I will. I've been helping Senator Blackburn on the campaign trail. I'm sure that will ramp up going forward, and spending some time at home with the kids and the grandkids and the dogs sounds really good to me.
That does sound good. Any closing questions, gents?
No, I will say that I appreciate the fact while our politics are different, we've gotten along, and I've been impressed with a number of things you do, even disagreeing with a few. But I've been impressed with the lack of scandal out of your office while the rest of the county sometimes seems to be melting down. You've done a very good job of managing your staff with very little controversy. And I just wonder, is there anything that you think that the next mayor could do to maybe put some oversight on some of those other departments to prevent some of this from happening? Because it's a problem in this community.
Sure. That is an issue at the state. The Constitution,
constitutional officers.
Yeah,
right.
constitutional officers. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to do. Obviously, really it's up to the voters to put good people in those offices. And I think for the most part, yes, we have scandals, but for the most part, when you look at some of the folks, most of the folks in those offices are good people. And I think even the folks that have made mistakes make mistakes. So ultimately, it really depends on who people vote for. But as far as the mayor's office, very limited ability to provide oversight to the other constitutional officers.
Thought I would share this tweet, Mayor, that you put out a few years ago, I think. Always an interesting Twitter column. Being a libertarian means that I don't spend every waking moment worried that someone somewhere is doing something I don't agree with. Do what you want, just don't hurt other people and don't force your views on them. Otherwise, mind your own business. We'd all be happier. Seems like pretty good advice no matter what your position is.
It's called freedom, John.
There we go.
Yep.
Glenn Jacobs, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning, and we will be watching with immense interest, and maybe you'll even come back to Inside Tennessee, depending on what happens in the next, 6 months after August. We'll see.
Sounds good.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Got to take another break, and then we'll wrap it up with a final discussion about politics. All right, we're back. Final block, final thoughts. I'll throw this question to both of you in the 90 seconds that we have remaining, and appreciate Glenn Jacobs being on. Contrast, compare, who was better? Burchett, 2 terms, Glenn Jacobs, 2 terms. Eddie.
So I think they both have their pros and cons. Obviously, they've both done well. I think what's most striking for me is that both of them came in with institutional knowledge on county commission, and what I see coming up for the next mayor is actually less institutional knowledge on county commission, as well as what will probably be in the administration than what we've seen in the last 2 mayors.
Well, to directly answer your question, I got along with both while they were there, although they were from the opposing party. I appreciate the fact that Glenn Jacobs was still fiscally conservative, even a little more so than I would like to see with parks, rec, greenways, outdoor living, things that are important to me personally, where Tim Burchett, while he spent a little money on it, he really just poo-pooed it like it really didn't matter, and it mattered to so many people. And I think Glenn Jacobs has done a nice job, and maybe that's because he came from a sports background, but I really appreciate how he's handled it. While I think he could have done more, he did a lot, and I respect that. So I'm going to go with Mayor Jacobs.
And it will be interesting to see if he does get to be the Tennessee Senator. Senator. All right. Well, gentlemen, appreciate it very much. Hope the rest of your Sunday is good, and we appreciate you watching and hope the rest of your Sunday is good. We'll be back next Sunday morning on Inside Tennessee. Take care.